Who's surprised by Janet Jackson's statement? When the last time Janet Jackson had a black experience in America, let alone a real job? This woman been rich and famous most of her life. She had the luxury of only dealing with her problems and her trauma and her bubble with the money and resources to get professional help. While the rest of us, we have our own trauma and problems to deal with. Aside from that, we have to go work a 9-to-5 and problems and stress to deal with in the job environment. And then we have to interact with this society. I'll tell you this. Regardless of Kamala's race, ethnicity, culture, whatever, she's more connected to the people than Janet Jackson. Janet Jackson been disconnected. The only people that I really see that rock with each other is black Caribbean people. Other than that, everybody else is in their own slice. And whereas black Americans, you got to get in where you fit in.
Before I get into this nonsense, I have to give a shout out to Black Alpha Network for retrieving this video. Because if it hadn't been for him, I wouldn't even known this existed. Now here I am thinking I'm probably done talking about the whole Janet Jackson, Kamala Harris thing, especially because the last thing that you saw from me was the whole Ana Navarro thing, and I talked about that, only to come across something even more ridiculous than what Ana Navarro did, as if it could have gotten any worse, but it did. So here you have this no-name nobody, who I could care less to look up who it is because I don't really care, came out and made this statement right here, this video. I guess they put it up on their TikTok. It looks like TikTok, saying a whole bunch of BS about Janet Jackson not being connected to the people because of how she grew up and how she was raised, because she really didn't have to come from a struggle. She didn't really have to work for anything. She didn't have to get it out of the mud. This man must not know Janet's story. This woman went out of her way to not try to be too attached to her brothers growing up so she could have her own name and not live in the shadow of her brother, well, her brothers, but the main one, of course, being Michael. He better go and look into this woman's story. Like, she didn't want to be known as Michael Jackson's sister, but who would? Like, that's like, you know, you're trying to create your own lane, and that's exactly what she did. She carved out her own lane, and she has been doing this very well ever since she was a child. And it's the blatant disrespect that this dude is putting out there to make it seem like Janet doesn't know the meaning of hard work. She doesn't just go on stage and just perform night after night just to simply perform. She has to literally put in a lot of hours, more than the average person has to do, in order to continue doing what it is that she loves, which is singing and performing for the masses. The woman is 58 years of age. She's almost 60. She's been doing this again since she was a little girl, since she was in like the single digits. And to sit up there and literally say something like that and then pedestalize Kamala Harris, and then notice that when he was talking, he said no matter her race or her ethnicity and everything like that, that Kamala Harris is more connected to the people than Janet Jackson ever was. Excuse me? He better check Janet Jackson's resume on the charities that she has contributed to that specifically are beneficial to black people. Her and her brother. Especially her brother, because he's probably been in the Guinness Book of World Records so many times for being one of the highest charitable donees or donors ever out of any celebrity that you can think of. And the fact that he tried to down, this is so ridiculous. It's pretty much a non-factor, but I just have to call it out because when I see this, again, going back to that so-called black and brown thing, it doesn't work. It does not work. Everyone is throwing on their cape for this woman. And again, just like with Ana Navarro, this guy right here is not us. Like the song says, he's not like us. But again, he's throwing his 2 cents in there because he feels comfortable enough to do so. This is why I'm clapping back on him. This is what Harvey's talked about quite a bit. He says it's fine when we call out white supremacists. I mean, we can do that all day. But don't forget to call out those who are not white. That's why I call them the co-colonizing cohort. When they say something like this, you have now deemed yourself an enemy of us. You are now on the radar. Even though after this, I probably won't even hear about this dude ever again. I don't even know his name. I don't even care. But it's the fact that he came out there and blatantly disrespected this woman, and then had to end it off with saying that people in the Caribbean, or black people in the Caribbean, are more, united and all this type of thing. And he says, as far as black Americans, that was that part at the end when he said, as far as black Americans go, you got to get in where you fit in. You know what he's really trying to say, right? That black people in the Caribbean, or people who are like non-FBA, are taking over, and we're going to basically shut up shop wherever we want. And if you're black American, you better find a way to get in, or we're just going to phase you out. Like, that is some colonizing ass shit to say. That's why I say co-colonizing cohort. Now, looking at this man's image, he looks like he's probably on the Dominican side, maybe Puerto Rican. I'm not entirely sure. But the fact that he had the nerve, the unmitigated gall, to come out and say that out of his mouth, and say that Kamala Harris, in so many words, is blacker than Janet Jackson is, or she's more connected to the people than Janet ever was, is some bullshit. Again, Janet Jackson set off a social media firestorm where everybody has lost their minds. You know what? Scratch that. They didn't lose their minds. They would to lose their minds would imply that they had a mind to lose to begin with, which I'm thinking or assuming that many of them did not do. It is nothing but an empty, hollow void that's sitting on their head. There's nothing there. You could throw a little pebble around in that thing and it will bounce off and echo. That's literally what it is up there with these individuals, because they are so upset, they are so butthurt and in need of preparation H, that they have literally pedestalized, like I said before, this woman over an actual black woman who has lived a black experience. It doesn't matter that this woman is famous. It doesn't matter that this woman has made all of this money. It doesn't matter that she sold millions of albums, or gone on many tours, or released all these albums. At the end of the day, Janet Jackson is a black American woman. She has came from 2 black American parents. All of her siblings are black Americans. She knows what, and that's another thing. Talking about she doesn't know what it's like to be like, to come from nothing. Hello, do you not know where her family is from? They're from Gary, Indiana. They literally grew up poor. Now, fortunately for Janet, she only had to live that life like that in squalor for 2 years out of her life. Because by the time she really was of age to really know anything, her brothers were already famous. That was the whole point. Kudos to Joe Jackson for doing what he had to do in order to get them up out of Gary, Indiana. You better look into their backstory. Like I think that's what pisses me off when he said that, because when you know the Jacksons' family backstory as far as where they started, humble beginnings, growing up in a 2-bedroom home where all the siblings had to sleep in one room, where all the boys slept in a room and the girls slept in another, or was they all slept in one room? Either way, they grew up very, very without. They were considered have-nots way before they became haves. So to make it seem like Janet Jackson was born with a silver spoon in her mouth, that's some bullshit. And I think that's what pisses me off about what he said, is because he tried to belittle her experience. This woman did not grow up with a silver spoon. She did not start off being, living the life that she's living now, not even close. She had to work for what she had. And then being the youngest and a girl, and then to try to step out of the shadow of her already famous brothers, I'm sure was not the easiest thing for her to do, but she did it, especially when it came to Michael. So this, whatever he put up here, as far as I'm concerned, this was nothing more than a menstrual rant. And when I say menstrual, I'm talking about the cycle.